I'm sure you've seen this all over the place. Something posted online makes your mom, your partner, your friend laugh hysterically, but your boss cringes. Or have you shared a photo that your friends absolutely loved, but your professor definitely didn't need to see? That awkward overlap of audiences is called the context collapse, and it is changing the way we communicate, build identity, and above all, manage relationships in the digital world in which we live. Welcome back to Communication Campus. Welcome back. As always, I'm your host, Dr. Malynnda Stewart. And in today's episode, we are unpacking context collapse. This concept that helps us understand what happens when all the separate parts of our lives collide online, in our social platforms, in our emails, just kind of anywhere in our digital world. Now, this term was popularized by media scholars Danah Boyd and Alice Marwick. And their goal was to describe what happens in digital platforms when audiences who used to be able to separate their lives by context all occupy the same communicative space. So think about this in the fact that offline, we naturally tailor our communication to different audiences. We don't speak to our grandparents and our classmates and our coworkers in the same way. At least most of you probably don't. But on social media, those contexts blur, and one post has the potential to reach all of them at once. So how do we manage that? If the ways that I would communicate offline would be tailored, I can't tailor that the same way in digital spaces. Now, this idea of context collapse draws from Irving Goffman's dramaturgical theory, where everyday communication is a performance with a front stage that is for public behavior and a backstage for private life. But in digital spaces, those boundaries completely collapse. A single tweet or TikTok video can reach friends, strangers, and employers, and we have zero control over which of those groups sees these things. So, this means that posts that were meant for one audience can easily be reinterpreted by another. So, what does that actually mean? Well, this means that this collapse is constantly requiring us to manage multiple identities at once. We have to recognize that how we're performing is going to overlap potential audiences who may or may not interpret our messages completely differently. So, why does this really matter? Well, this collapse explains a lot of the tensions we feel online. And some of those tensions can include our self-presentation challenges. As users, we must constantly decide what is safe or appropriate to post. Additionally, there's this pressure to perform for everyone, which often leads to a strategic ambiguity, saying just enough to fit all the audiences. Another tension that we feel is our own identity management. Our online identity is a performance of curation. It's not just self-expression. Which pictures do you choose to have posted? Which one is your profile picture? Is it a picture where you've perfectly posed and your neck is, oh, I forgot what the kids call it. Muting, I don't know. Forgive me. I'm old. But do I have the perfect angle? Or is it this weird angle and I'm making a really strange face? I bet the strange face is not your profile picture. It's not the one you want your friends to tag you in. So we are thinking about how are we presenting ourselves to this online world. In other words, we selectively post or code switch depending on how we want to be seen. There are days and times where we want to be and show how vulnerable we can be. And then there's other times where absolutely not. You will not see the vulnerable side. That is a choice in my own identity management. We also have to really think about, I think more now than ever, emotional burnout. And this is that constant awareness of these mixed audiences leads to, flat out, honestly, it just leads to exhaustion, it leads to anxiety, or it leads to silence. Many users cope through this Finsta accounts, right? These private accounts, the disappearing content options, where the shelf life of what I'm saying and what I'm posting is very short. That way, I don't have to worry too much about people finding the things that I'm posting. But when every post feels public, feels permanent, that performative piece becomes really stressful. And our authentic selves and our authentic communication become increasingly harder. So, how do we navigate this context collapse more mindfully? Now, scholars and digital culture researchers suggest taking a few key strategies. One, we need to consider audience segmentation. Use different platforms for different parts of your identity. So, for example, my LinkedIn posts are very much focused on the professional groups that I am a part of. It is very much my professional sides of things. Yet, TikTok or Instagram or even Facebook are far more fun. Facebook is probably the most authentic part of who I am. Again, yes, I own that I'm old. But when I use TikTok, I'm still talking about things that are important. It is still a professional side of who I am, but I want it to be something reachable. Even these videos I'm doing for a specific audience, for my students, for the potential other students. So you're getting a very small snippet of one aspect of my identity, and that being the professor side of my identity. If you look to other tools and find me on other social platforms, you'll get a slightly different version of me. We also think about contextual integrity. How do we maintain consistency with our values across all of these contexts? So, as someone who is talking about the importance of communication, you're going to hear me talk about these theories and these concepts and ideas in everything because it's a huge part of my integrity. Who I am and how I present myself is got to stay in alignment no matter what the medium or the channel is. Lastly, we want to think about empathy. I need you to remember that everyone else is also managing context collapse, and some are doing it better than others. So we need to have some empathy and some grace and give them some space to figure it out on their own. In other words, communication competence in the digital age isn't just about clarity, it's about context awareness. So, to sum up this episode, we need to remember that context collapse happens when multiple audiences merge in online spaces. It challenges us to present ourselves and interpret others. And it reminds us that digital communication isn't just a new medium, it's a whole new context of connection. All right, that's it for today's episode. Thank you for joining me. And I look forward to talking to you again as we start thinking about semiotics and how these symbols are impacting us in digital spaces as well. Until then, keep communicating.